恭敬大德善听，为此法会济一切众生，请转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱死，离苦得乐，顺真无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to live suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchetoye alahati sanmiao sanputo 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, and all good knowing advisors, welcome back to this week's exploration of Dharma using the Sutra of the Medicine Master Buddha as our guide. Let us recite Medicine Master Buddha's name 7 times before we get to the sutra. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life, Medicine Master Buddha. 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 Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come, Medicine Master does come one. All right, while I'm getting today's slides up, you can look at the chat box. We already have a question from Ron. If anyone has other questions, please either type into the chat box, or like Lucy said, if she has a question and if she types it into the chat box, it will be difficult for her to listen to what's going on, and then she'll miss out a part of the lecture. So if you're like that, like Lucy, then all you need to do is just unmute your microphone. Or if you're forgetful like me, you think about something and then you want to say it, but then you forget, you can have a pen and paper next to you and write down your question so you don't forget, or so that when the appropriate time comes, if you don't want to interrupt, then you can wait until I pause. Then you can just unmute your mic. Okay, let's continue in our exploration of the heaven of the 33, or the Trimsha heaven. Okay, I'll just go ahead. So today we're going to talk about the gods of Trimsha heaven and their attendants or apsaras. So devas or gods are often described as of extremely pleasant appearance. That means they're very beautiful or they're very handsome. They're very good looking. Okay, and because the how would I say? Most of the stories that we have, most of the encounters that we have between people and the gods are mostly from this heaven, the Trimsha heaven, and the heaven of the four kings that we covered in the last few weeks. The gods from the upper heavens, not so much. They have interactions with the Buddha, and they have interactions with the monks, but not so much with regular humans. Yeah, I think their existence is too refined or too subtle um, uh, for us. Yeah. So anyway, so these gods are extremely good looking. Okay, they are also said to be radiant. But there are a lot of stories where when the gods appear, sometimes all people see is a very bright shining light. Sometimes they think that the city is on fire or the forest is on fire, but it's actually the light radiating from the gods themselves. So they say a glorious brilliance which is compared to the morning star or even to the sun and moon. Okay, their clothing very fine, extremely fine, and they are splendidly adorned with gold and jewel ornaments, especially with flower garlands. So that's how they adorn. That's their jewelry. They always have jewelry very well, uh, and always in the latest fashion, I guess. I'm not sure what the fashion is in the heavens, but they always have the latest fashion. And so this is very interesting. Uh, if you are a male god, you always appear to be about 20 years old. And if you are a female god or devata, you always appear to be about 16. I guess, I'm not sure about how humans are, but I guess that represents uh, the peak of youth, just as it transfers into adulthood. You know, you are at your physical peak. So male they always look 20 years old. You don't need to go for plastic surgery or all those things that people go for nowadays to try to maintain the youthfulness of their skin and their faces or their bodies. In the heavens is natural. You don't have to think about it. And what they eat is something called Sudha Bojana, translated as ambrosia, because it's served in a cup. So the commentary say it's probably a liquid, and it's been described in one of the Jataka tales as being white, pure, and sweet smelling. Yeah, and um, when you drink this, it's supposed to, how you say, calm the mind and the body. And there are stories from Shufu. I don't remember the exact story, but Shufu says if you can manage to fast for up to 6 months, okay, meaning you meditate and at the same time you don't eat. Shufu says if you can do that for 6 months, then the heavenly gods will start feeding you their sweet dew, which is this Sudha Bojana, food of the gods, apparently. Yeah. Sometimes in the sutras they have gods that have a bit. The food is more cost. It's not this. I guess that might be referring to the heaven of the four kings, although I'm not too sure. And in the case of the Buddha, before he became the Buddha, when he was practicing in the forest and he was eating one meal a day, and he realized that he had come to he had pushed his body to the most extreme. He was trying to find a way to end birth and death, and the prince thought that by mortification of the body, there could be one solution. And because of that, he took the body to its most extreme, and he realized that if he had continued, he would have died. And at the same time, the gods also came to the Buddha and said, "You have not achieved your goal. And if you continue this way, we will infuse your body with heavenly dew," which is this, the ambrosia, to keep you alive. And then the Buddha realized that, the prince realized that, okay, that's not the right way. He wouldn't want that. And he also realized that starving himself only leads to death, not freedom from birth and death. So that's two interesting stories about uh, the food of the gods. Okay, now let's talk about their attendants, also known as apsaras. So apsaras, sometimes they're translated as nymphs, and when we have descriptions of the gods and they have a retinue, most of the time the retinue is made up of these acharas. What are acharas? They are said to be a class of minor female gods, and their sensual charms form one of the principal delights of this particular heaven, of the Triumphrimsha heaven. They are said to be very, very beautiful. In terms of beauty, no one surpasses them. They are also said to be married to Gandharvas or celestial musicians. Sometimes not. It's a bit mixed. The lines are a bit hazy. Sometimes they're known as the wives of Gandharva. Sometimes they're known as a minor class of female gods. They are always adorned with finery and jewels, and they're very, very skilled in the arts of music and dance. So whenever they have festivals, and the first to go and dance will be, and to play the music would be these apsaras. Yeah. If you ever come across ancient carvings of in Buddhist art, and you see that there are female figures that are, how you say, are depicted with feet that look like birds' feet that have claws, it refers to apsaras. It doesn't mean that they actually have uh, uh, bird-like feet. That's actually to describe how nimble they are in the way that they dance. So that's apsaras. If you remember last week when Lord Shaka was describing the Palace of Victory, he says, the palace that he built has 100 towers, and then each tower has 700 chambers, so there's 7,000 rooms or chambers, and then each chamber has 7 devatas but he used the word nymphs. Yeah, and then apparently after these nymphs, they each have 7 maids. So like I said, the lines are a bit blurred. I can't really figure out what exactly are apsaras, but okay, I have a picture. Okay, if you look at your screen, you see in the clouds there are like heavenly maidens. What are they doing? Apparently, they're supposed to be dancing. Okay, what this scene shows, this is a very, very old Chinese woodcut. It's a collection of woodcut um, uh, woodcut art, I guess, depicting the Buddha's life. So what you see is you see someone in a carriage that's in a procession. This particular woodcut is referring to when the prince wanted to see the city, and he was having a very sheltered life, and he wanted to see the city, and his father, King Sudodana, had arranged for the city to be cleared of everyone who was sick, everyone who was old, everyone who was sick, sick, old, and sick and old. Yeah, of course, die. Anything that had any ties to death was also removed. So this woodcut shows the prince going out on one of his excursions to see the city, and above in the clouds, he was accompanied by all the heavenly gods, and the gods were accompanied by the apsaras who were playing music, You can see on the upper right hand corner, there's three figures, one figure holding like an umbrella or a parasol above the middle figure. So I guess the middle one is a god, either male or female, and then the two flanking him or her would be the attendants, or they could be the apsaras, or they could be maids. Yeah, not very sure. So they're all, most of them are holding musical instruments. Okay. So next time you see Buddhist art like that, you know, okay, oh, those are apsaras. Okay, so there's a very interesting story, a very funny story that Shufu told us when Shufu was giving his commentary on the Amitabha Sutra, and it involves the Buddha's younger brother. So the Buddha had a younger brother, or actually technically a stepbrother, who was born, whose mother was the sister, or was his auntie, who took care of him after Lady Maya had passed away after giving birth to the Buddha. Okay, so let's go to this story. So I have the full story here from Shufu, because there are different variations of this story, but the one from Shufu I find is the most entertaining one. So I'm going to share what Shufu has given us. So okay, so there's a comment. Lai Chun says that there are carvings of apsaras on the ceiling at Ten Pian Buddha Hall. Yes. So anytime when you see flying maidens holding musical instruments or dancing, those are apsaras. Yeah, they are all over Buddhist art. If you go to Angkor Wat, for example, sorry, not Angkor Wat, what's that? Borobudur. If you go to Borobudur, for example, or if you look online for Buddhist art, there are a lot of examples of apsaras. Okay, so Sundarananda is the name of the Buddha's younger brother, not to be confused with Nanda. Okay, there are some texts that refers to the Buddha's younger brother as Nanda, but there's another Nanda who was a cowherd. So if you see Nanda, it usually means Sundarananda as the Buddha's younger brother. Okay, so Shufu said, Sundar, I'll just use Sundar from now on, the short form, loved his wife, Sundara, more than anything, and even the name is similar. The two of them were as if glued together, walking, standing, sitting, and lying down. Walking, standing, sitting, and lying down are called the four deportments. If you are a monk, you apply your precepts to whenever you apply your precepts to the four deportments. So no matter whether you're walking, standing, sitting, or lying down, which covers everything that you do, you always hold the precepts. So Shufu is using the four deportments to emphasize how close this married couple was. So one day as the Buddha returned from the palace where he had gone to collect alms, he passed Sundara and Nanda, who were having lunch. When he saw the Buddha, meaning Nanda, when Nanda saw the Buddha, he went out to fill his bowl. That means give alms to the Buddha. So as he left, Sundara spit on the floor and said, "You may give the Buddha food, but if you don't return before that dries, you're in trouble." Okay, so that's how close they were. All right. So every time I'll just call him Nanda from now on. Every time Nanda took a step forward to hand the Buddha his bowl, the Buddha moved away with his spiritual powers, so that in what seemed just like a few steps, Nanda suddenly found himself in the Jeta Grove 5 miles from home. So basically the Buddha tricked his younger brother. And all the younger brother was trying to do was just to put food in the Buddha's bowl. But before he knew it, he was in the temple. So as soon as they arrived, the Buddha shaved Nanda's head. Okay, as if that wasn't bad enough, the Buddha kind of forced Nanda to become a monk. Said Nanda had no desire to live the home life because he did not want to give up his wife. But the Buddha was his older brother, and so he compelled. So he was very respectful of the Buddha. So he just went along. Okay. So he was thinking to himself and said, "You can cut off my hair," he thought, "but the first chance I get, I'm going to run away." So that's why I say Shufu's version is very entertaining. So as day after day went by, Nanda got more and more nervous. The Buddha and the Arhats were staying in the Jeta Grove, and Nanda had no chance to escape. One day, the Buddha and his arhats went out for lunch and left Nanda to watch the door. So today is the day, thought Nanda. I'm definitely going home. Okay, so his task is to watch the door, but his plan is to escape. Okay, okay, hold on. Let me see if I. Okay, so I just want to say, people with the Buddha, people leave home, they become monks. But in Nanda's case, he wants to go home. He wants to do the opposite. So, but before the Buddha left, however, he had instructed Nanda to sweep the floor. So the Buddha gave him 2 jobs: wash the door and sweep the floor. Eager to be on his way, he went right to work. But every time he got the dust together, a gust of wind blew it all over the room. He tried closing the window, but when he closed one, the other blew open. Shifu said it was very strange. He said this went on for 2 or 3 hours. The Buddha will be back any minute, he thought. Dust or no dust, I'm leaving. So he threw the brew down and he ran. Okay, so there's a part that I'm not sharing in the text. I'll just narrate it, what Shifu said. So Shifu said, Nanda thought to himself, say the Buddha uses the main road when he walks, so he'll take the side road instead. So he ran for a couple of miles on the side road, and suddenly he saw the Buddha walking towards him. So what did he do? He hid behind a tree. He thought the Buddha wouldn't know that he was there, so he went behind a tree, waiting for the Buddha to pass him. And as the Buddha walked nearer and nearer, he moved around, slowly moved around the tree to keep himself hidden. So Shofu said he did not, he said, who would have guessed that the Buddha would follow him around the tree step by step? So the Buddha, instead of just keeping walking on the road, the Buddha, like, how you say, I seen a video where there's a dog that chases a squirrel around the tree. So that's what happened. Nanda would try to keep on the opposite side of the Buddha around the tree, but the Buddha would just walk around the tree. And when Nanda reversed his steps, Shufu said, so did the Buddha. And the Buddha said, Shufu said there was no place to hide. So the Buddha eventually asked Nanda, I said, what are you doing? I thought you were watching the door. And what did Nanda reply? Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Nanda said, I waited and waited, said the embarrassed Nanda, but you didn't return, so I came to welcome you. I thought that your bowl might be too heavy, so I came to help you carry your bowl. That's the story he came up with. So wonderful, said the Buddha. What a good little brother. Now let's go back to the Jeta Grove. Okay, this reminds me of a story. Let's have a short story in a story. I actually have a. Okay, so this story is about the same thing, but it happened to Shufu and one of the monks. I think it was one of the monks that went on the first 3 steps, 1 bow pilgrimage. The monk escaped to the rooftop of Gold Mountain. This was San Francisco in the very, very early days. I think this was in the 60s or maybe in the very early 70s. And he went up to the rooftop of the building because he had a blueberry pie or some kind of pie. I think it was blueberry, which he wanted to eat, but it was not time to eat. And as he was, I think it was nighttime or something. So as he wanted to eat, he saw Shufu coming up to the roof. And the same thing happened. As he tried to escape from Shufu just followed him everywhere. And the photo that I have, which I should have looked for it before I thought of sharing this story, is the next day at lunchtime at meal offering. Shufu hands him a big plate of pie as to continue the joke. Yeah. So I don't think I would be able to look for that that image right now. So maybe next time. Yeah. Okay. So coming, let me see if, yeah, probably not. It's too much to look for it right now. Okay. Coming back to the story of Nanda, the Buddha's younger brother. Okay. So they went back to the Jeta Grove, and the Buddha knew being the Buddha, and Nanda wasn't happy at being forced to leave home and not have his wife next to him. So the Buddha had this plan. He said, Nanda, come with me for a hike in the mountains. And Nanda said, all right. And he was thinking, if I get the chance, I surely run away. So Nanda was very single-minded about running away. The mountains were full of monkeys. There were 500 or 600 of them. So as they passed the monkeys, the Buddha asked Nanda, he said, comparing these monkeys with your wife, are they more beautiful than her? And Nanda replied, why Buddha? Of course, Sundara, my wife, is more beautiful. Monkeys are ugly. How can you compare my wife with a monkey? Of course, my wife is more beautiful. And apparently, Sundara was a very beautiful woman. Why? Because Nanda himself, maybe not why, but Nanda himself was also very, very handsome. Yeah, he was. It is said that the Buddha had the 32 hallmarks. Nanda had 30 of the hallmarks. So he was very tall, was very good looking. He was very well proportioned. Okay, so coming back. So when they had returned to the Jeta Grove, the Buddha said, Nanda, have you ever been to the heavens? Would you like to go? So, no one says no to an invitation like that. So Shufu says Nanda and the Buddha sat in meditation, and then the Buddha used his spiritual powers to take him to the heavens, where they visited a palace where 500 goddesses and many servants were working. So the Apsaras. So the heavens were a million times more beautiful than the world of man. And Nanda had never seen such beautiful women. So naturally, he fell in love. Okay. So he went up to so in this palace, he went up to the women, he said, or the gods, the devatas. He said, don't you have a leader? He asked, who is your master? So they replied, our master hasn't arrived yet. He's Shakyamuni Buddha's little brother, Nanda. He left home to cultivate the way, and because of this, in the future, he will be reborn with these 500 goddesses as his wives. So Nanda, when he heard that, he was delighted because why? They were talking about him. And these were his future wives. Remember, when we last week, they said that when a human being does a good deed, then if the retribution is rebirth in the heavens, then your palace will appear in the heavens while waiting for you. So this is what was happening. So, but Nanda, because of the Buddha's power, Nanda got to visit his future home, his palace in the heavens. So hearing this, Nanda was delighted, and he promptly forgot about his wife. He said, I don't think I'll run away after all. I'll cultivate diligently and get reborn in heaven instead. So he had a new goal. Okay. So now the Buddha asked Nanda, said, Nanda, are the goddesses more beautiful than Sundara, or is she more beautiful than them, than the goddesses? Nanda said, compared to the goddesses, Sundara is as ugly as a monkey. So this is the how beautiful the Apsaras are. So the Buddha said, which would you prefer? Then the goddesses said, Nanda, Sundara is beautiful, but the goddesses here are out of this world. I mean, literally, they are out of the world. In the future, you'll be born here, said the Buddha. Now let's go back and cultivate. So it is said that from then on, Nanda meditated day and night. He had a new, he had newly found vigor, and suddenly he found living home to be very, very meaningful. And so he cultivated day and night so that he could be reborn in the heaven. But because heavenly blessings have outflows, you are just exhausting your own blessings. They are not ultimate, and there's still an end to heavenly life. So the Buddha had not finished his plan yet. Okay, so what did the Buddha do next? He says, there's nothing going on today. Would you like to visit the hells? He asked Nanda. So Nanda said, I've heard that they aren't very scenic, but if you want to take me there, I'll go. So Shufu said they visited the hells of the Mountain of Knives, the Sword Tree Hell, the Fire Sea Hell, the Ice Hell, and many others. Finally, they came to a hell where two ghosts were boiling a pot of oil, or they were supposed to boil a pot of oil. The lazy ghost had let the fire go out, and the oil wasn't even simmering, so the oil was cold. And because he was with the Buddha, Nanda felt very brave. So he questioned the two ghosts. He says, "What are the two of you doing? Fooling around and going to sleep?" So the ghosts opened their eyes, stared at Nanda and said, "What do you care?" They said, "We are in no hurry. We are waiting for someone who isn't you for a long, long time." "So who are you waiting for?" asked Nanda. They said, "Oh, we are waiting for Shakyamuni Buddha's younger brother, Nanda, if you must know," he said. He left home. So the two ghosts were explaining who they're waiting for. He said, he left home, meaning Nanda, but seeks only the blessings of the heavens and the 500 goddesses. He'll be living in heaven for 1,000 years, but in his confusion, he will forget how to cultivate and will commit many offenses. This will create evil karma and drag him into the hells to be deep fried in this very pot. So I guess what unsaid is that when the time comes, they'll start the fire again and Nanda will be there. So when he heard this, Shofu said every hair on Nanda's body stood straight up on end, and every pore ran with cold sweat. He said, "How could this happen to me?" he moaned. So Shofu said from that moment on, Nanda gave up his aim of getting reborn in the heavens, and he resolved to end birth and death instead. And he actually did it. Nanda certified to arhatship. So Shufu says Nanda was extremely, extremely handsome. How handsome? Okay, Shufu gave this example. He said, Shufu said, one day Shariputra was debating with some non-Buddhists, and these non-Buddhists were, Shufu compared them to hippies because they were the clothless ascetics. They went around not wearing clothes. And Shariputra was able to defeat them in debate. So after they were defeated by Shariputra, they met Nanda, and they told themselves, they said, if the short little bhikshu could beat us, meaning Shariputra, so apparently Shariputra wasn't a very tall bhikshu. He said, if the short little bhikshu could beat us, how can we possibly outtalk this tall, handsome one, meaning Nanda? So they took Nanda as their teacher, and they all left the home life after Nanda. So I guess being good looking has its benefits. Okay, so next. Okay, now we will move on to heavenly mansions, the palaces that the gods have when they are in the heavens. They are also known as vimanas. So vimanas or palaces apparently vary greatly in detail from one another. They don't look the same. And these differences depend on the degree of merit made by the deva. So the palace that you get depends on the meritorious deeds that you do. So every god gets what they deserve. Last week we heard about the former king Payasi, who was reborn in a heaven that had, was it last week? Okay, anyway, there was a King Payasi that was reborn in a heavenly palace that was made of wood, and he had no attendants at all. Why? Because when he practiced giving, he wasn't very sincere. He didn't do it personally, and in the beginning, he gave things that he himself didn't want. So that was his reward. Vimanas are usually described in extravagant fashion as being brilliantly luminous, they give out light, and made of precious substances, most often gold, but gems and lapis lazuli are also commonly found. And it's not just a palace, but it has like a bungalow. They have land around a freestanding house, so they are often surrounded by parks, groves, and ponds. Swimming pools, right? Okay. The interior may include multiple rooms and stories, furnishings such as divans or sofas, many musicians and dancers, and this means the Gandharvas and the Apsaras, and sometimes songbirds as well to play music. Remember last week when Lord Shakra was describing his palace of victory, he said, my palace has 100 towers. Just now I mentioned each tower has 700 chambers. That's how big the mansions are. So we just talked about this. It is said that when a human performs a particularly virtuous deed, a mansion for that person will appear in Trimshire heaven for that person to inhabit upon being reborn there. So that's the case as we saw with Nanda, the Buddha's younger brother. Vimanas are not fixed to one spot, but are able to travel through the air by the psychic power of the owner. So everywhere you go, you can bring your mansion with you, and they are said to travel as swiftly as thought. So although they're big, it's not like us where the bigger things are, the slower they have to move. Over there, the moment you think about where you want to go, you're already there, and your whole palace travels with you. Yeah. Okay, let me move on. Um, the devas may travel in their palaces to attend festivals, to visit Nandana. Nandana is the grove, or other groves, or even on rare occasions to the human realm. So they can come down to earth, where we are in their palaces. And there are several incidents in the Vimana Vatu of devas coming with their mansions and retinues to see the Buddha. What is the Vimana Vatu? I spoke about Vimana Vatu before. The Vimana Vatu is a collection of is a collection of all the stories that we have that the sutras contain about the heavenly mansions. It has, I think, about, let me see, about 80, 83, 80, 88 or 83 stories. Most of them were told to the Buddha, or were recounted to the Buddha by Venerable Mahamoggallana, who would go to the heavens, or he would come across a radiant deva or devata, and he will ask them, the reason for their splendid appearance and their palace, and then they would tell him how they received, what they did to get the palace. So they're all compiled in a book called the Vimana Vatu, or usually translated to as stories of the mansions. Yeah, it's part of the Tripitaka. Okay, I have actually one to share. Is a goddess called Sesawati. So this is called Sesawati's mansion, and it is story, uh, collection 3.7 in the Vimana Vatu. So it starts with, actually this might not be Venerable Mahamoggallana, but another monk. I think the monk's name, I don't have the monk's name right now. But this story, I think I made a mistake. It may not be attributed to Venerable Mahamoggallana. Yeah. So don't how you say? I might be wrong here. Okay. So a monk, okay, a venerable exclaimed, "I see this delightful and beautiful mansion, its surface of many a color, ablaze with crystal, and roof with silver and gold." So he's describing the palace. A well-proportioned palace possessing gateways and strewn with golden sand. As a thousand red sun in the autumn shines in the sky in the 10 directions, dispelling the dark, so does your mansion glow, like a blazing smoke-crested fire in the darkness of the night. It dazzles the eye like lightning, beautiful, suspended in space. So some monks can be very, what's the word for it? Good in prose, in stringing words together. He further describes this place. He said, "Resounding with the music of lutes, drums, and cymbals, this mansion of yours rivals Indra's city in glory. White and red and blue lotuses, jasmine, and other flowers are there, blossoming sal trees and flowering asokas, and the air is filled with a variety of fragrances. Sweet-scented trees, breadfruits, laden branches interlaced with palm trees and hanging creepers in full bloom, glorious like jeweled nets. Also, a delightful lotus pool exists for you." So basically, you think of the 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 best mansions in this world, in our world, and you expand that splendor by by thousands of times, and you get an idea of what a heavenly mansion could be. So the monk further says, whatever flowering plants that can grow in water, trees that are on land, those known in the human world and heavens, all exist in your abode. Of what calming and self-restraint is this the result? By the fruit of what deed have you arisen here? So it's addressing the Devata or the goddess who this palace belongs to. Okay, I know the monk's name now. Okay, the monk's name is Wangisa. Venerable Wangisa. So it's not Venerable Mahamagaliana, it's Venerable Wangisa. Okay, so it says, how did this mansion come to be possessed by you? Tell it in full, O lady with thick eyelashes, meaning you have very pretty eyes. So the goddess, the Devata, Sesawati, replies, she says, how it came to be possessed by me, this mansion with its flocks of herons, peacocks, and partridges, and frequented by heavenly waterfowl and royal geese, resounding with the cries of birds, of ducks, and cuckoos, containing diverse varieties of creepers, flowers, and trees, with trumpet flowers, rose apple, and asoka trees. Now how this mansion came to be possessed by me, I will tell you. Listen, venerable sir. Okay. Let me see. Okay, before we go to the next slide, okay, I will give you some backstory about this goddess Sesawati. So before she became the goddess, okay, in one of her past lives, when she was reborn, this was a long time ago. The Buddha Kasyapa, who is the Buddha Kasyapa? The Buddha Kasyapa was the Buddha just before Shakyamuni Buddha. Just as how the next Buddha will be Maitreya Bodhisattva, who's coming to become the next Buddha. Kasyapa Buddha was the Buddha before Shakyamuni Buddha. So when they were building, after Buddha Kasyapa had entered Nirvana, as they were building a stupa for the Buddha, Sesawati was a little girl. And when they saw that they were building the stupa, she had this little gold ornament that she wore as a necklace around her neck. She offered it to the stupa. So the mother took the gold ornament, gave it to a goldsmith who included it into a gold brick that a goldsmith was making that was used to build the stupa. So because of her generosity and her, it's not just generosity, but the joyness and gladness that accompanies when you're able to do a deed such as that. When this girl died, she was reborn. It is said that she was reborn in the heavens for several lifetimes, until when this story begins, and she was reborn during Shakyamuni Buddha's time, and she was 12 years old. Okay, so when she was 12 years old, she was sent to buy. She was sent to the shops to run an errand for her mother. So when she went to the shop, she found the shop owner was digging the ground of the shop. And what was the shop owner doing? The shop owner was looking for the treasure that his father had left him. And what was the treasure? Jewels, gold, and coin, money. So the father of the shop owner had buried the treasure so that the son, after he died, the treasure would be safe, and then the son could inherit the treasure. But all the son found when he dug in the place that his father told him were only pebbles and rocks, little rocks. But at that time, the shopkeeper wasn't like some ignorant person. He understood that because of his own karma, the treasure did not appear, and all he could see was just pebbles and rocks. So he thought to himself, he said, through the power of those who are in merit, it will become coins, gold, and so forth. So he realized that he lacked sufficient merit and virtue to inherit the treasure the father left him. So this little girl came. Okay, Sesawati came to the shop, 12 years old, and she looked at the heap. To the shop owner, he had collected all the little rocks and pebbles and he put it into a heap. To him, it was just rocks and pebbles. But what she saw was a whole heap of gold and jewels and coins. So she wondered aloud. She said, why is it that someone would just, leave a pile of valuable items like that? Things like that should be properly kept away. So the shop owner heard her. He opened up his shop and asked her, what do you see, little girl? And she said, all I see are coins, jewels, and gold. Meaning, what he could see as only rocks and pebbles. So he explained to her, he said that the treasure my father left me were vanishing because of the fruit of our bad deeds. It doesn't say what bad deeds he's referring to. It says, but because of the excellence of your deeds, they have become of worth. Therefore, from now on in this house, you alone are to take charge of everything. We will use only what you decide. So basically, he wanted her. So I didn't say that he had a son. So he has a son, and he wanted her to become his daughter-in-law, and in return, she would be in control of all the treasures that the family has, and they will only use what she determined. So that's the story of this Sesawati. Okay, all right. So moving on, as she explains to the Venerable Wangisa about how she inherited this mansion, she said, in the eastern region of the excellent country of Magadha, there is a village called Nalaka, Venerable Sir. There I lived formerly as a daughter-in-law, and they knew me there as Sesawati. So she's explaining her life. She didn't say how, because of her past deeds, that the treasure was revealed to her. She just said that she became the daughter-in-law in the town she was staying, the village called Nalaka. It said, scattering flower blossoms joyfully, I honored him, skilled in deeds and worship by gods and men, the great Shariputra, who has attained the immeasurable quenching, meaning who has become an arhat. Having worshipped him, gone to the ultimate bond, the eminent seer bearing his last body. On leaving my human shape, I came to Triumtrimsha heaven and inhabit this place. So basically what she's saying when she says, having worshipped him, gone to the ultimate bond, the eminent seer bearing his last body, she's referring to Shariputra entering Nirvana. So what's the story here? Okay, so the story here, this is another story within the story. Okay, Buddhist stories are always like that. They're very fascinating. Okay, so what happened to Shariputra was that he realized that his time was coming to enter Nirvana. So he paid his respects to the Buddha, and he asked permission of the Buddha to leave. Why? Because he wanted to repay the mother's kindness before he left. The mother, Shariputra's mother, at that time did not believe in the Buddha, but she believed in Lord Brahma. So Shariputra wanted to be a filial son and cross over his mother, or try to cross over his mother before he died, or before he entered Nirvana. So where did he go? He went to Nalaka. There's this village or town that Sesawati was living in, because his mother was also living in Nalaka. So he went to his mother's house and he stayed there, and then his bodily sickness manifested. So the mother knew he was sick, and the mother was his sickness was very grave. It wasn't a minor sickness. Basically, he had dysentery. So the mother was keeping watch on Shariputra by the doorway to his room. And then the mother saw the 4 great kings come visit Shariputra. And the 4 great kings, when they came, they were all, the 4 great kings from the heaven of the 4 great kings. And they came in all their Deva splendor, exhibiting light in all their fine clothes and adornments. And she saw Sariputra just wave them away. And who came after that? Lord Chakra. Lord Chakra, the king of the Trimsha heaven, came to visit her son. And again, they came because they wanted to take care of Shariputra, like physically attend to Shariputra since he was sick. And Shariputra also waved Lord Chakra away. And then who else would come but the very god that she herself worshipped, which was Lord Brahma, to visit Shariputra, and Shariputra also waved him away. So she was very curious, and she asked Shariputra, he said, who are these, glorious people who came to visit you? Are you greater than them? First, she asked about the four great kings. So Shariputra said, well, the four great kings are just like temple attendants compared to a monk. So she's like, oh. And then she said, how about the second visitor that you have, the Lord Chakra? Then he said, oh, compared to us, Lord Chakra is like a novice monk who carries a monk's belongings. She said, oh. Then she said, then who was the last visitor that you had, the most glorious of all? Then Shariputra replied, he said, oh, that's the very God that you worship. And in the Dharma, Lord Brahma is, he together with the other three Lord Brahmas, there's just not one Lord Brahma, apparently there are four Lord Brahmas, they were the ones who received the Buddha when he was born. So this really impressed uh, his his mother. He said, "Oh wow!" He said, if my own son has such great power, like even more than these great gods of the heavens, especially the one that she herself worshipped, thinking that he is the creator of all life." He said, "If my son is so great, then his own master, the Buddha, must be a really really great person." So at this point, Shariputra knew that the mother was feeling very, very joyful, and she had a lot of rapture in her heart. And Shariputra then transmitted the three refuges to her and spoke Dharma for her. And at the end of him speaking Dharma, Shariputra's mother became a stream enterer, or first stage arhat. Okay, so coming back to our goddess Sesawati. So not long after this, Shariputra entered Nirvana, and they had a huge, a lot of people came to pay their last respects to Shariputra. So when Sesawati heard of this, as the in-law, that time she was still the in-law, she prepared many baskets of flowers and perfume that she wanted to offer to the funeral in as respect to Shariputra. And she wanted to go personally, but it is said that at that time she was pregnant. So her father-in-law was very concerned. The shopkeeper, the father-in-law, advised her not to go as she was pregnant, and because there were going to be a lot of people, he feared for her safety. But she went anyway because she was very sincere in wanting to pay respects to Shariputra. She knew there could be a danger to her life, but she didn't care. She thought that being able to make an offering was more important. So she was at the funeral, putting her palms together, and at that time there was one of the royal elephants was also there to pay his respects to Shariputra. This elephant was in heat, so it was described as a rutting elephant. So elephants, especially male bull elephants, when they are in that stage, they can be very unpredictable because how you say, they can be very violent. So when the people saw that the elephant was there, they became very afraid and they all ran away. So a stampede occurred, and actually not poor, Sesawati was caught in the stampede and she died. So that's what happened to her. So the father-in-law's fears were realized, but because she had the opportunity to pay her respects to Shariputra and make a sincere offering, she died in faith and with a mind of bliss. She wasn't afraid at all. Yeah. So because of that, she was reborn in the Trimtrimsha heaven with a magnificent palace that surpasses anything that that uh, the world, our world that we know of has. Yeah. We are running out of time. Actually, what I have next is how Dharma affects rebirth, just like in Sesawati's case. But in this case, it is how Dharma affects the rebirth for a god. Yeah. So now we have gone through how the Dharma or acts of generosity benefits someone as a human. But we shall keep the next story for next week. Okay. All right. So we will now address Ron's question. So Ron's question is, as Buddhists, are we obliged to rescue Buddha or Buddhist statues, pictures, or images that are left out on the sidewalk for people to have? If we pick it up, bring it home, and decide it doesn't fit at home, can we donate it to a thrift store like Goodwill, or should we pass it on? He says, my brother picked up a Buddha statue left on the sidewalk in his neighborhood. He asked me if I wanted it. Like a good Buddhist, I said sure. But now after a week, I have this question. Okay, Ron, if part of the Bodhisattva precepts, okay, the Bodhisattva precepts are for people who have taken the 5 precepts. Sometimes they have observed the 8 precepts and they realize that they see their potential for something greater, and they have the heart to become a Buddha. They have the intention to become a Buddha. So the Bodhisattva precepts are there to guide someone how to shape our thoughts and actions to be like a Bodhisattva. Okay, so that we can plant the causes to become a Buddha. So one of the Bodhisattva precepts is that we have to, or we should rescue Buddhist images, statues when we come across them. So think of it this way: is the right kind of mindset or perspective or heart that you want is, imagine, uh, you go on a walk and you see someone you care about, maybe your grandparents or your parents or your brother, your sister, and you see their photo on the ground. Their photograph is lying there in the dirt or in the garden, and you're not going to leave it there, so you would naturally pick it up. Or if you see that someone is selling the photograph of your father or your mother, and it's not being used for proper purposes, maybe they're decorating it in a very funny way, or it is misused. For example, it is used as a picture of a murderer, which is not true, and so what comes is a very natural response in order to make things right. So that's the same kind of attitude that we should have, especially for the Buddha and the Dharma. Why? Because that's the way we can end our own suffering. So our reverence for the Buddha and the Dharma should be the same or greater than the reverence we have for ourselves, as well as for people that we care for, when we encounter their images being abused or neglected or misused. So of course, it is greater than that. Okay, the Bodhisattva precepts is greater than that. But in order to understand the Bodhisattva precepts, first we have to begin with a place of understanding that we can relate to. So as our practice progresses and our reverence for the Buddha and the Dharma increases, then that gives more and more meaning and relevance to this particular precept. Okay, so that's for someone who has taken the Bodhisattva precepts. Okay, for someone who has not taken the Bodhisattva precepts, but now that you know that the Bodhisattva precepts have that. You do what you can. Okay, you do what you try your best. You do what you can. Sometimes it is just not possible to do it. For example, there's someone I know who found a very, very big Buddha image, too big for any home. I think the Buddha image was maybe like up to 10 feet tall, is more appropriate in a monastery. And it was found on top of a dumpster. And something like that, unless you know a monastery that requires a Buddha image like that, or a monastery willing to house a Buddha image like that, personally, there's not much that you can do. Yeah. But at least having the wish to uh, uh, wish that the situation would be different is a start. So in your case, Ron, if let's say you have given a refuge to a Buddha image, but you find that you're running out of space, or for whatever reason you are unable to house the Buddha image, then what you can do is, instead of giving it to a place like Goodwill, where you don't know where it might end up, you can try to find a more suitable home for the image. Maybe someone who's looking for a Buddha image, for example, or a monastery that accepts Buddha images. Yeah, just don't be casual in like putting it in Goodwill. That's a big casual. Yeah. Does that help, Ron? Does anyone have any ideas for Ron?
Thank you, Usher. I just, wasn't really quite sure, how to deal with that. So I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Yeah. So your first response when your brother picked up the Buddha image was correct. You followed
Okay.
your heart. Yeah, and you gave it a home.
Well, I haven't actually received it yet. I mean, he texts me, and he doesn't live in this. He lives about 50 miles away from me, so I need to, go to his home one of these days to get it.
Okay.
Or I need to meet with him one of these days.
Okay. Maybe don't do it for yourself, but do it on behalf of your brother, since your brother, had that good deed, was able to do that good deed and rescue the Buddha image. If he cannot house the Buddha image, you could house it on behalf of your brother, instead of thinking about maybe, if you could give it to a different home. Yeah, maybe do it on behalf of your brother instead.
Okay, sounds good.
That might be more meaningful.
Right.
Okay. All right. Any more questions, anyone? Or ideas, suggestions? Okay, if not, let's dedicate merit. Get the slide. Okay. I'm going to invite everyone in joining us in putting our palms together. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, let's do 3 bows to the Buddha and then to Shufu. 3 bows to the Buddha. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Venerable Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Okay. So Ron, I just thought of something. If you receive the Buddha image, and what you can do is you can make offerings to the Buddha image on behalf of your brother. So, for example, if your brother is not a Buddhist, you can make the offerings in the hope that he ends up in a good place. Maybe have a nice heavenly mansion in one of the heavens. All right. Okay. See everyone next week. Amitabha.
Thank you, Dhamma Master.